let me first tell you a few things, right? And I am a firm believer of sort of a destiny, and I'll tell you how destiny has shaped me and where I am, right? So, I'm a doctor by first training. Parents always wanted me to be a doctor, so I took up that thing without knowing what lies ahead. So the moment I went into medicine, I sort of 3, 4, 5 years into the medicine, I realized that the gestation period for a doctor is way too long. Right, he has to study till 35, and then 5, 6 years of practice, and then his own hospital, and this and that, and all that stuff was the normal course that I saw. So it start and obviously practically you start earning at the age of 40, 45, and then you're practically earning for the next generation, was the thought that I had at that point in my life, right? I mean, so I started getting disillusioned. I thought maybe this is not what I want to do, right? So I started looking at few items, right? What can I do if not medicine, right? At that point in time, a typical sort of a way of medical professionals to move out of the sort of medical field would be to go to US and get settled in UK, right? But I didn't want to do that also, because I thought maybe it's not the right time for me to leave the family in India and then go to US, right? So and I had read in or I had seen at Aaj Tak a TV show which said that choti umar badi salary, right? Small age and big salary. So they were talking about the pay packages of the then IIM grads, right? So I thought, I was fascinated that hey, I mean, this looks quite cool, right? I mean, so but I always had in mind that for so doing an MBA, you would require, let's say, and mathematics in +1, +2, right? I didn't have mathematics after my 10th class, so I was never sort of sure that I can write CAT, right? So as luck would have it, I was having tea at a chai tapri, and there was one guy who came on a scooter there, and he was an IITian, and this was chance encounter, nothing planned, no nothing, right? I mean, so he told me that hey, you don't need to have maths. Then I ran and got the form somehow, and sort of filled the form in the last. Then there was only 3, 4 months available at that point in time. I was working with Fortis hospitals, so I went and grabbed all the NCERT books and started sort of reading on first principles, right? So, and then as luck would have it, I sort of got admit call from IIM Indore, and I sort of joined IIM Indore, right? So in IIM Indore, my sort of starting point was, and some of my friends, some of them whom would be on the call, they started teasing me that hey, you are a doctor, why do you have to study for pharmaceutical for a summer internship? Some pharmaceutical company will come and take you, right? And so I said, Chalo, I will not take any pharmaceutical company for internship role, right? As luck would have it, the pharmaceutical companies came. My first 2 offers were from Wokhard and Glenmark, right? So again, I was in a quandary कि भाई अब तो बोल दिया है कि that I don't want a pharmaceutical job. Then what do I do, right? So then a face saving for me was that I got Coca-Cola as a branding opportunity for summer internship. So my understanding was that I'll work with Salman Khan, because those days Tufani, chalo kuch Tufani karte hain, advertisement was going big. So I thought ki I'll get and work with Salman Khan, right? So with that sort of an expectation, I went in the corporate office of Coke Gurgaon, and the first 3 days they put me on a truck, right? In 45-degree temperature, my job was to take crate of Coke from this place to the small shop, ask him, boss, kitne kal chahiye, kitne aaj chahiye, make a note, and then come back and then sort of ask the helper to reload the truck, right? So I did that for 3 days. Again, that was sort of a life-changing experience, right? I said, boss, I didn't sign up, I didn't leave medicine for doing this stuff. So I went to the HR saying कि मुझे तो I was hired for branding. What is this, right? So she said that, kid, you first should know how the product sells in the market, right? Before you can even dream of thinking about what branding is, right? So again, a big jolt, right? So I made peace with my invigilator, or my guide. He said, "Ki boss, I will give you a B minus, right? Don't waste my time in next 2 months. Do whatever you have to do, right?" So I made peace with that. So in the end, we had a settled sort of a negotiated this thing that you give me B minus, and I will not disturb you. I will only come with a final report, right? So that's how my summer internship happened. Now, when I came back from summer internship, right, I had no choice left, right, because I had ruled out strategy and corporate by ruling out pharmaceutical and corporate jobs. I had ruled out marketing, right, by sort of making a fool of me at Coke, right. The only thing that was left with was finance, right. So I came and hurriedly took every finance subject which was there because I had to fulfill my credits, right. So that is where I'm thankful to IIM Indore, because they allowed, because IIM curriculum allows you to sort of change in second year. So I took every finance credit that was available on the market, even futures and options. The only subject in which I got a D, right, because I couldn't understand head from tail, right. So this happened. Then I slowly started learning. I slowly started liking finance, because I saw that 2 plus 2 is always 4 here, and it makes logic and it makes sense. And then I started reading Ashwath Damodaran, right? So and that sort of piqued my interest further, right? And as luck would have it, then I sort of got selected for JP Morgan and from campus, and I got actually knocked into a very different orbit from what I had thought when I was about to enter MBA. From the time, and then when I sort of got out of MBA. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that if a doctor can, with no maths background, can work with sort of folks like chartered accountants and IITians in an MNC, in the sort of a biggest bulge bracket bank, which was available at that point in time, I think anybody can do anything, right? Most of us are actually constrained by our own sort of a thinking, right? That is what my life or my sort of experience at IIM Indore has told me. And armed with this thing, I think I became a lot more bolder, so to speak, in my choices going forward as a career option. So in 2009, so from JP Morgan, I moved on to a very, very relatively startup private equity fund. The fund had, I was the third member to be hired, right? They had only 2 partners, no fund. We had to raise funds, right? And at that point in time, I had offers from 3 of the largest sell side banks. So I had an offer from the equity research desk of Edelweiss, offer from equity research desk of Morgan Stanley, and offer from equity research desk of Motilal Oswal. All 3 were like relatively well established sort of choices, and but I thought that maybe I want to sort of move to a buy side, and I would rather be a sort of a large fish in a small pond than a small fish in a large pond, right? This thought has, I think, helped me a lot going further also, right? That it is always better to be a large fish in a small pond than a small fish or an insignificant fish in a very, very large sort of an ocean, right? So with that thought, I started working at that fund. Initially, my job involved even the printing the brochures and then sort of assembling the brochures into one set, like the job that a peon would do. Because we didn't have anyone else, we were only 3-membered team or 5-member team. 2 more associates were hired after me. So all 3 of us associates would do all of these activities also during the working hours, and then go to raise and meet people for even 5 lakh rupees check, right? So even we met, we would meet, let's say, tens of people in the every day, asking them to put money. We would sit outside the SBI bank office because their general manager would take a lot of time in signing 2 crore investment into the fund, right? All those things we sort of did, right? So the core tenet that I think I learned there was persistence and resilience, right? So I remember that myself sitting on the desk outside of the State Bank of Patiala AGM or the GM, right? His desk, I would sit for maybe 8 or 9 consecutive days, right? He would see me every day, and then he would say कि अच्छा मैं करता हूँ, we'll sign, and he will, in the evening, he will not do anything, and at 6 I would return back to BKC, right, to the office again. Next day, follow the same stuff, go at 10 in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, sit there, just have a cup of coffee and just make sure that I'm seen by him every day, right? To the point that he got irritated after 5th or 6th day. He said, ki 7th day, he said, ki boss, let me sign your this thing, right? So those traits, and then we were lucky to invest into companies that are, Professor Ganesh, you mentioned companies like HCG, KIMS, Care Ratings, all of which went on to do very, very good for us, right? So in that fund, I think that was a 450 crore fund. I think we returned roughly 1200, 1300 crore to the investors, and that fund was a huge success. And this is the time when tech companies were not so prevalent. So we made all this money in old school businesses, so to speak, right? Which is very difficult to sort of make. So great experience. Then continued this thing, and further I was part of 2 other sort of funds. Then once I had spent 10, 12 years in the fund life, I thought that maybe, and at the point in time I was at the juncture of the age where if you could, your risk-taking ability would go down every passing year, right? And at that time, I thought that I had the reasonable balance of hustle and experience, right? 5 years ago, I had more hustle but less experience, and 5 years hence, I would have probably more experience but maybe very little hustle left in me, right? I mean, so I thought at that point in time was the right time for me to jump. Still, I think that maybe I was maybe 5 or 6 years late in starting this startup. The kind of financial security that I wanted or is reasonable for me to expect, I had roughly 5, 6 years ago, but I was actually what do you call as golden shackles, right? Because on every 30th, a good salary would come to your account. So then you think, if it is not broken, why take a panga, right? And so I regret that I didn't start it maybe 4 years, at least 4 to 5 years ago. I could have started it, right? But then that is what it is, right? So again, my suggestion for people on this call would be that I think this is possibly the best time for anyone to start up, right? Because I'll tell you a few things. One of the things which are commonly told are that there is a lot of capital, this, that, and all that stuff, right? That is correct, right? But the respect for a failed entrepreneur is way too huge in the ecosystem, right? If you have taken a shot at solving a real problem, I'm not saying that you can't be saying that after 7 Flipkarts, I'm making the 8th Flipkart and I failed and now please value me. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you're trying to take a stab at a real sort of a problem where you are either first, second, third in the market and have a differentiated offering, but because of few things you fail, right? You would be the first candidate to get hired in any of the successful startups, and you would get a role and a responsibility which is far outweighing from a person who's coming from a successful background, let's say like a consulting background, right? A failed entrepreneur is like gold dust, right? So then with this sort of a setup, right, I think this setup plus availability of tech plus availability and India's demographic sort of a dividend, there are so many problems to solve. I think it makes perfectly good sense for people to sort of take couple of 2, 3, 4 years of experience, and then if they have an ambition of being an entrepreneur, then not wait for maybe 3 to 5 years that I will build this war chest and then I'll do that. Because if you fail, you would be even far more valuable as an employee or as a normal sort of employee for any startup or a large organization, right? So you actually become far more valuable, right? So that is one thing that I want to sort of emphasize here. We at Glamyo Health are continuously on the lookout for people who have for some reason not been able to sort of scale up their venture, right? So because those people know tens of things that they wouldn't want to repeat, right? Because they've seen fail themselves, right? So that's my other sort of a genuine piece of advice, that do not wait maybe 3 to 5 years. Start. I wouldn't say that start immediately after the B school, unless there is an actual sort of a calling which is very strong, right? Obviously, then in that case you can start. But the right sort of an experience would be, let's say, 3 to 4 years of experience, or depending on case to case. And if you have an ambition of starting something, right, you should delve right into it. I think the journey has been very enriching, but very humbling and very learning also, right? So from the outset, sometimes seeing people, Glamyo Health or any startup in press, it feels like that it is all hunky-dory. Trust me, I would say that it is never hunky-dory in a startup, right? So you're juggling 20 different balls, right, and still maintaining a calm face to the external world. But there are many firefights which are going on in a startup, and it is like the equivalent of this would be that there are two ways of going from Delhi to Bombay. One is you take a flight and sort of take a sort of a selected seat, right, which is the normal course. If you were to take a startup sort of a route, an analogy would be that you are constructing the plane as you are flying, right? I mean, so while you are flying, you're sort of building some door, you are repairing some roof, you are repairing. So it's all on the fly. It's all happening in real time. Most of the times, you won't have sort of a time to think as to what hit you, right? And it would have hit you, right? So the thing that has helped me here is possibly reading or now listening to podcasts of various successful or even sort of founders from the previous generation, right? Autobiographies, biographies, right? So you get to learn few of the mistakes that those guys sort of made, right? So I would strongly urge people to take learning from that piece. That has helped me immensely, right? That doesn't mean that I will not make mistakes, right? We made our own shares of mistakes, and we'll keep on making mistakes as we go along, right? So some of the mistakes, we made, which maybe tens of people have already made, right? We were still sort of foolish enough to make them, but that's how life is, right? But some of them we avoided, right? Because we saw that, hey, this guy had much more money than me, but he still failed at this juncture. I even don't have that money, so I need to sort of find a solution rather than sort of banking on money or throwing people at the problem. I need to innovatively solve it, right? So that thing helped us, right? So again, a suggestion or a personal thing that has worked for me here would be that read as many autobiographies or listen to the podcasts of the successful founders, right? You will get to sort of know a lot of things which you can avoid. That is one more advice. Now coming to, I jotted down a few points on how to sort of evaluate the startups that you may want to sort of start. The first sort of a thing for a startup would be to identify a market, right? So my own suggestion would be, and this is just the common wisdom also, which you could have read many times, is to start with a large sort of a market, right? Now, one thing that I would just want to highlight here is you have to look at the TAM, or the total addressable market, from two aspects. One is the need which your solution is solving today, right? The second is there are adjacencies around in your demand cycle or in your ecosystem where there is maybe a latent need where your solution or a tweak of your solution can be relevant. So most of the time people do not sort of add that latent sort of a market to the total addressable market, right? So it's very difficult to do. There's no science to it, and you sort of keep on getting wiser as you go along. So in the beginning, I don't expect the first-time founders to be able to sort of see through it, right? A seasoned person with 3-4 startups, whether successful or failed, will be able to see that, hey, in this area we can do in this adjacency, or so on and so forth. So take a stab at a large market, right? Identify your product market fit in a very, very small controlled environment, right? So let's say if you are doing a tech startup, right, and obviously going forward, most of the startups would have a larger and larger sort of a proportion of tech as an either enabler or the solution itself. So choose, and let's say you're creating a marketplace, right? And let's say you're creating a P2C marketplace. So choose a area or a cohort where you can control as many variables as possible, right? So don't take too many variables in the beginning, right? Because you'll then get lost, right? So create a what is called in the sort of a private equity or a venture capital parlance as a minimum viable product, MVP. Run it past, right? Be brutally honest with yourself. Don't fall in love with because it's my baby, right? Because I'll tell you what will happen if you were to fall in love with your baby and sort of keep on pushing a suboptimal sort of a product, right? And then later on, if you fail after, let's say, 3 years, right? What you would have lost would not be only 3 years or capital or opportunity cost, right? You, in most cases, would lose the hope and desire to start again, right? So most of us, if we fail in one startup, our sort of a go-to action would be that let's join a job, right. So then, in some cases, it will be the entrepreneurial zeal would be lost forever, right? So it makes perfect sort of a sense or a perfect selfish self-serving interest for you to be brutally honest in the feedback which is coming from the market in the beginning, right? Without any emotions attached. If it's not working, it's not working. You're better to sort of fail fast and move on to maybe an iteration, new iteration, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, so just be sort of cognizant of the fact that you sort of start in a small cohort, small controlled experiment with as little variables as possible. Be brutally honest to the feedback that you get. Then a few of the learnings that I have had over the last 10 odd years that I've seen startups from up close and personal, right? Always solve a real pain point or need, right? Uh, it is easy. The biggest pain in this universe is the pain of new idea, right? So try and sort of, if the market is large and there is, let's say, number one player which is already there in the market, that doesn't mean that number two player cannot come, right? That means that the number two player has to be smart enough to learn from what number one player did or did not do, and how can I improve on it. It shouldn't be a direct copy of a number one, right, player, right, one to one. So obviously you learn from number one player, but you need to have your own sort of an original thought. You should be solving a real pain point, right? That may be similar to the first offering in the market, but you would have thought that, hey, he's approaching the market from ABC perspective. I think I can approach the market from XYZ perspective, and my sort of a solution would be better than the existing offering. That should be the going in point. Barring few sort of patentable things, if you're sort of creating a silicon chip or something like that, most of the ideas are non-stealable. No one can steal your idea, right? I mean, execution is the biggest moat, right? So I wouldn't worry in the beginning about sort of people stealing my idea, right? A lot of the time I see LinkedIn sort of statuses saying that in stealth mode, right? Now, contrary to that, what I found is that if you are sort of vocal and sort of about your idea and explain it to people, you get A, early adopters, and B, your ability to hire good quality talent who believes in the same vision goes up, right? Nobody's going to join you if you've written that I'm for 1 year you're writing that I'm working for a startup in a stealth mode, right? I mean, nobody knows what you're doing, right? I mean, so how do you sort of get the good talent, right? Because good talent is not going to come to you, or let's put it the other way around, you will not be able to afford the good talent for salary, right? You don't have that kind of money, right, in the beginning. The good talent will come for the vision, for the sort of difference that you're going to make, right? If you don't tell that thing, right, how will people know about you, right? I mean, so only your 5, 7, 10 friends would know about your idea and what you're working on, right? On the contrary, it makes sense for you to sort of be a champion internally and externally, telling more people about the idea. Because trust me, nobody can steal your idea, right? You have to execute yourself. Ideas are dime a dozen, right? If you can execute, it is as simple as that. It's an open playing field. Whosoever can run fast, right? I mean, so in the beginning, you have to identify areas where you are lacking and which are critical for the success of the company. In most cases, for example, in my case, I'm tech savvy, but I can't write tech for saving my life, right? I mean, I'm not a techie, right? I mean, so So tech is one area which is sort of a weak point for us, right? And is going to be a weak point for most of the folks, right? Because so it will make sense for you to sort of have either a tech co-founder, or if you're not able to sort of find a tech co-founder, then it makes sense for you to hire a good tech resource, right? Give him lots of ESOPs, and he can be the highest paid person in the company, even much higher than the founders, right? So at our company also, our digital marketing head, whom we hired from a very, very prestigious sort of company, and he has had experience of building many sort of verticals. His salary would be 3x of what I'm taking home, right? That's the nature of this thing, and I'm okay with it, right? So in the initial stages, don't optimize for being the highest paid person in the company. You will make your money on equity. Focus on sort of selling in the first, or focus on create some few North Star metrics for you, right? A North Star metric for e-commerce platform would be transactions, right? Because a North Star metric for a community would be, let's say, a virality. For a community would be number of people who are sort of joining, whether they transact or not is secondary, right? So each business or each sort of a business will need to have its own North Star metric and start focusing on the North Star metric in the first 6 months. Even if your product is 60% ready, you will never be 100% ready, right? So just run with the 60% sort of a product, and same rule also applies for hiring the employees, right? So barring few critical functions, like I said, techie, right? In the case of tech talent, I theoretically should hire the best tech talent, right? But if the tech talent is not available and I have a person who's 60% of the best tech talent, I'll run with it, right? Rather than wasting 6 months finding the most perfect fit. Funding doesn't guarantee success. When you get funded, what I've seen is that most people, and I would include myself also in that, right? So we're also guilty of that. You start throwing people at the problem rather than actually solving them, right? Because you have money, so you'll say that, hey, this department, hire 2 more folks, hire 2 more folks, hire 2 more folks. They're only 30,000, 40,000 rupees salary. They're only 50,000 rupees salary, and so on and so forth. Right? So what happens then is that you've created a flab in the organization. B, these are not machines that you have hired, right? These are people who have their independent thinking, who have their independent vices, who have their independent ways of sort of interacting, who have their independent ways of behaving in a team setup, and so on and so forth, right? So you're increasing the variables, right? And then there'll be a definite loss of culture which will happen at the organization, right? You may have in your sort of a deal, you may have hired 20 of the 10 folks, 5 folks who are, let's say, into drugs, right? I'm just hypothetically throwing examples, right? And so the culture starts going for a toss, right? So it makes more sense for you to be sort of solving for the actual innovation or the solution, right? Rather than saying that, hey, because I have money, I will hire 5 more folks. So, and don't be loose with money even when you have plenty of it, right? You will never know when it runs out. So just be very, very careful with the funding that you have.
Maybe I'll break the ice. I'll start if there's others can. Yeah, go ahead, Sanjay.
So good evening, Sanjay Gupta here, sir.
Yeah, Sanjay, go ahead.
So thanks for the session. I think it's I think with the same thing which I have been listening right now. I've been going through for last couple of years with my startup. So I will only request the speaker, if I can have his phone number, I can contact him. Maybe individually I can speak to him about my startup.
Sure, I'm more than happy to sort of help.
Yeah. But can I have a number, please?
You could introduce yourself. Which batch are you from?
Basically, I'm from PGPMX batch, 2013 pass out. Okay. Basically, I'm a engineer with 20 years experience in sales and marketing and strategy. So I'm Indore was my second MBA. Okay, the first MBA I did in 1998. Okay, I've worked with organizations like Sansui, Merck Electronics, Godrej Agrovet at a category head profile where I'm responsible for turnover and profitability. Okay, it involves everything right from communication to devising product mix, to understand competition. So everything that's related to profitability and turnover for category. So I was to handle audios and also color TVs. So I've also worked in retail, the pantaloons and Godrej Agrovet retail called Aadhaar in rural areas. So I think with that mix kind of understanding, I do have some kind of a thought process. We are basically in social media space where we are like a Twitter in a video form. Okay, it's a very innovative kind of a product, and we have launched around 2.5 years, 3 years back. We're
Preet,
also,
Sanjay was my
yeah,
student also in my course, one of the most active students in the course, and subsequently also has been speaking to me about his startups and all that. If you can just help him out, it would be great. So if you can DM me your phone number, maybe you can pick it up from there.
Sure.
So, Preet, my question is that in terms of identifying opportunities, how exactly you go about scanning the environment? And if you can share how, because in your case, I think it's a related field in the sense you're already a medical doctor, so you took up something related to that. Is that something which you advise people to do, or
Yes.
they scan opportunities, and then whatever comes by, they go by that?
Right. No, so I think the first thing is the size of the market, right? And size of the market has to include both the present size of the solution and the latent need that one may be able to solve going forward, right? But in most cases, the latent need is not apparent in the beginning, so I wouldn't expect people to have. So at least on the direct sort of a visible addressable market, right? The size should be, and one rule of thumb that one can apply here is, let's say, when I start a startup, right? At least I should believe that I'll create a unicorn, right? So, which means that if I have to create a unicorn, then what is the going in valuation in those area that I want to start up? Let's say I'm starting in a B2C vertical. So the going in valuation there is, let's say, 20 times of or 20 times of the gross margins of the contribution margins that I'm able to make, right? So 20 times of gross contribution margin means that I need to make 50 million of contribution margin, right? So 50 million of contribution margin would mean that if my average ticket size that I'm offering is, let's say, 10,000 rupees, right? And I make, let's say, 1,000 rupees in each this thing. So then there are X number of transactions that I have to sort of conduct on my platform. X number of transaction forms, let's say 2%, 3%, 4% of the total people who are likely to be using this solution. Then if my guess is that I can take a 2-3% market share and still I can make a 50 million contribution margin and have a shot at a 1 billion valuation, that's a large enough market for me, right? Similarly, in a B2B, if I'm sort of starting a B2B startup, again, the same metric I'd use that, but the multiples in B2B are not that high as compared to a B2C company. So in B2B, the multiples would be, let's say, 10 times of the contribution margin, right? So here, I would need to make 100 million sort of worth of contribution margin, let's say. And so then I would skim that my offering is for, let's say, SMEs or mid-sized corporates or very handful of the large corporates, right? Who am I targeting? And then how many of them are there? And so on and so forth, right? So I'll do this reverse maths in this manner, right? So once this math stacks up, right, then I would do a small what we call as product market fit, right? Then you've already decided that because the math fits, now I want to sort of spend more time into this sort of a field. Then you start sort of creating a minimum viable sort of a product, right? So a product market fit, very sort of a loosely, and these are some of the words of some of the investors that I've been lucky to co-invest along with. So Excel, which is one of the sort of most reputed private equity funds and venture capital funds, right? One of their investors used to say that a product market fit is that a customer has a pain point or a need, and you can solve the problem or satisfy the need, right? That is the starting statement. That is the product market fit. But you can solve it in an efficient way, in a cost efficient way. You can deliver this same solution to many such people who have the same need or same pain point, right? You are able to work with the early adopters because they are tech savvy, so they'll be able to live with few inefficiencies in the system or your app or your whatever the interface that might be, and then slowly you roll it out to the next set of the customers, right? So the early adopters, hence so then you sort of choose a very small controlled setting. It could be, if you are an e-commerce platform, it could be one geography. It could be one cohort. If you are trying to sort of solve for a particular set of sort of buying behavior of the consumers, right? And once you see traction and product market fit here, it is at this point in time that you think that you are onto something, and now how do I scale? Right? It's at this point in time you go to the VCs, you start building your team, you start thinking about your co-founders, you start thinking about many other things, right? And then you sort of run with this idea, right? So obviously this may not apply to each and every startup, but that's sort of a rough template which can guide you.
Hi, good evening, Preet. Good evening, Ganesh sir. So, Preet, you were talking like you would have started 4 or 5 years earlier. So, what is the kind of measure that you rely upon when measuring the readiness for having a startup, especially on the financial front?
Again, it will depend on each person individually, because each person has a different sort of social responsibility metrics that he has to or optimize for, right? So in some cases, if the spouse is working, right, so that's also an added sort of security, right? But roughly speaking, if you have let's say anywhere between 24 to 36 months worth of savings, which can last you for 24 to 36 months, right? I think you should start at that point in time, because if you're really objective about what you're doing, in that time frame, you would get to know whether this is working or not, right? And if it's not working, then obviously you are qualified enough to get some job. That job may be 10% lesser than what you were earning earlier, 20% lesser than what you were earning, but it can't be like and it may come 3 months late, right? But very seldom it will happen that you're trying so hard to find a job and you're not able to find any job. Very seldom that happens, right? And so I think I would say anywhere between 30 to 36 months worth of living expenses, if you have, right, you can take that plunge, right? Because the fall away sort of solution is that you will get the similar sort of a job, whether it's with 5, 10, 20% difference here and there.
Understood. So just a follow up, question. So 24 to 36 months of cash you're keeping apart, other than the money you would be investing in your startup, right? And for the amount of personal investment that you are going to make, that you would keep it fixed, or you'll be little flexible here and there.
So again, I'm saying that this depends. In my case, I had to follow this rule because I was old, right, compared to what you guys would be, right? And so nowadays people are starting up in their 25 to 30 age, right? So I was already in the 30 to 35 age bracket when this was relevant for me, right? So for me, the yardstick that I told was relevant, but for somebody who's not married and is 3-4 years into the system, post his MBA 25-26, right? Obviously, he can be far more he can be far more bolder than what I was, right? And that 24-30 months runway could be 12 months for him, right? And his expenses obviously would be lesser because he's single and no sort of this thing. So it will be different for different folks. And what I told you was relevant for me. But you're right that this is separate from the money that you're going to put into the startup, right? This is the disposable cash which is left after sort of taking the plunge.
I think we are also running out of time, Preet. So thank you very much. I think it was an excellent talk. I think it was different from many other talks I've heard in terms of entrepreneurship. This is straight from the heart. At the same time, you also came up with some rules of thumb as to how one can get into it, how to identify opportunities. I think it was an excellent talk, and it is glad to be there for the community. Anybody who wants to look at entrepreneurship, I would say look at Dr. Preet's video. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you so much, Professor Ganesh, for providing me time to sort of speak and give back to the industry, right? So all this, what we are doing or capable of doing, is because of I'm Indore. So happy
it's
to
always a pleasure.
Sort of any use to the industry, right? I mean, so more than happy.
Thank you.
Thank you.